You think cancer is the worst thing that could happen to you, until you realize the woman holding your hand in the hospital is also stealing your life. My name is Michelle Danner. I'm 52. And the last time I trusted someone blindly, I nearly lost everything I built while fighting to stay alive. You see, 7 years ago, I co-founded a boutique design agency with my best friend of 2 decades, Carla Whitaker. Carla was sharp, charming, and always 3 steps ahead in a boardroom. We were the perfect balance, my creativity, her logistics. I trusted her like a sister. So when my ovarian cancer returned after years in remission, I didn't think twice before handing her access to our company bank account, passwords, billing systems. I was being wheeled into surgery, and she kissed my forehead and whispered, "Don't worry. I'll handle everything. Just focus on surviving." But surviving meant coming back to war. I was in the hospital for 12 days, then bedridden for 6 weeks. No laptop, no calls, no questions. Carla sent flowers, a few check-ins, always ending with, "Don't stress. Business is booming." But when I finally opened my emails, my inbox was locked. My name had been scrubbed from the website. My calendar access was gone. I texted her, no reply. I tried logging into the business banking portal and found the name of the account had been changed. The logo was different. My company was gone. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I called our office, and the receptionist knew I didn't recognize her voice, said, "Michelle who?" I froze. I called one of our longtime clients, and they told me they'd just had a meeting with Carla Whitaker and company. That's when the truth hit like a second diagnosis. Carla hadn't just taken over while I was sick, she'd erased me. She drained our joint business account, filed a new LLC in her name, and even signed a lease on a new office with our brand, but under her name. My designs, my contracts, my systems, all transferred to a new company. She'd even gone so far as to tell clients I had stepped back permanently due to health complications. It was betrayal dressed as sympathy. But she didn't know one thing. Before my surgery, I had handwritten every major contract, every investor agreement, every partnership clause. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I feared the fragility of life. I stored them in a fireproof safe in my basement, under old tax returns and a dusty can of paint. And she never knew about my silent investors. Years ago, I brought in 2 quiet but powerful backers, an elderly couple who believed in my dream. Carla thought they were just advisory. She didn't know they held veto power. So I met with them, bandana on my head, scars still healing, voice shaking, and laid it all out. The documents. The theft. The deceit. They were furious. We didn't sue. We did worse. We bought her out. Quietly. Legally. Ruthlessly. One morning, at her big rebrand party, with clients sipping champagne and news photographers ready to snap her fake smile, we walked in. Me. My investors. A lawyer. And a cease and desist. I still remember her face when I stepped onto that stage. Her mouth hung open as the lawyer handed her the papers and said, "Ms. Whitaker, you are no longer affiliated with this business in any capacity. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises." Clients stared. Flashbulbs popped. Her hands shook. I walked up, scarred but standing, and said, "You said I should focus on surviving." I did. Now it's your turn to disappear. She tried to sue later, of course. But with the documentation, witnesses, and recordings we had, she didn't stand a chance. Her reputation in the industry collapsed. No one hires a snake who bites the sick. I didn't just rebuild my company, I renamed it Phoenix Studios. Because I didn't just come back. I rose. If you've ever been betrayed when you were most vulnerable, know this: survival is the first victory. But reclaiming your power? That's the final masterpiece. If you've ever trusted someone who turned on you the moment you were weak, this story is for you. Please like, share, and subscribe to hear more real betrayals and comebacks. And tell me in the comments, where are you from, and have you ever had a friend like Carla? I remember staring out the hospital window as rain tapped gently on the glass, thinking, at least the business is safe. My body felt like a battlefield, stitches tight, skin sore, hair beginning to thin again from the chemo. But my mind? It clung to the idea that Carla, my partner in everything, was out there, holding down the fort. I even bragged to the nurses about her. Told them how lucky I was. How rare it is to have someone who knows both your Starbucks order and your Q1 projections. I didn't know that while I was praising her to strangers, she was changing passwords, rerouting client payments, and scheduling meetings in a company I was no longer part of. When I got home, things felt off immediately. There were no calls from clients. No urgent emails. Even our assistant, Chloe, who used to text me memes at 2 a.m., was radio silent. I reached out, and her reply was stiff, "I've been advised not to speak with you during legal transition." Legal, what? That was the first time I felt the cold grip of panic. I grabbed my old planner, the one Carla always teased me for still using in the digital age, and flipped through it. There, tucked inside, were notes I'd made before the surgery, pending invoices, a list of secured clients, our weekly burn rate. That notebook became my lifeline. I tried logging into our shared cloud, but I was locked out. Then I checked our company website. My bio was gone. Replaced with a fancy press release, "After years of vision and service, we now move forward under new leadership." There was no mention of me. No farewell. No tribute. Just silence, as if I had never existed. I texted Carla. "Hey, trying to log into QuickBooks, need to catch up. Can you resend access?" No reply. I emailed. I called. I even messaged her on Instagram, where she had just posted a photo from a business lunch with the caption, "Women who hustle don't need permission." That's when I knew. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was theft in stilettos. My stomach twisted in a way that had nothing to do with chemo. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, still wrapped in a blanket, and let the tears come. Not from fear, but from the sheer humiliation of it. I had let someone into every corner of my world. My passwords. My bank. My home. I had given Carla power not just over the company, but over my peace. And she'd used it like a scalpel, slicing me out with surgical precision. That night, I opened my safe. The one in the basement, behind the false panel. The one even Carla didn't know existed. Inside were handwritten contracts. Printouts with original signatures. A backup of the old company bylaws. Notes from client meetings. Old texts with investors. It felt archaic, paper clips, sticky notes, ink-stained outlines, but suddenly, it was the only thing that still had my name on it. My proof. My receipt. I called the only two people I knew I could trust, Gerald and Susan Hayes, my silent investors. Gerald picked up on the second ring. I'll never forget what he said after I told him everything. "You let her borrow your house, Michelle. She tried to move in and change the locks. But the deed still has your name on it." Those words lit something in me. Not vengeance yet. But fire. Purpose. Carla might have stolen my face from the business, but she didn't know the bones were mine. And she sure as hell didn't know the storm that was quietly rebuilding beneath my stitched-up skin. I didn't come back for revenge. I came back to reclaim the empire she thought cancer would make me forget. The thing about Carla? She never read the fine print. She was fast talker, fast thinker, fast with decisions. But contracts bored her. She always said, "That's your territory, Michigan. You're the one with the magnifying glass." She didn't know that hidden inside our original partnership agreement one that we both signed, and I had tucked in that basement safe, was a very specific clause. In the event of incapacitation, partnership equity may not be modified, reassigned, or diluted without a signed release from both parties. And guess who never got that release? So while she was busy sipping wine at investor mixers and printing glossy brochures with her solo name in bold, I was meeting with a lawyer in a scarf over my bald head, coughing through every conversation, but focused like never before. His name was Alec Monroe. Not flashy, not loud, but sharp like a blade that never rusted. I handed him the contracts, the backup files, even the checks Carla had signed in her name for company expenses, using an account that was never hers to begin with. He flipped through everything slowly, then looked up at me and said, "This isn't just theft. This is calculated identity seizure. But here's where it gets better." Carla had unknowingly used our shared tax ID to register her new business. Which meant every dollar she earned was still under the umbrella of our original LLC. My LLC. She hadn't started a company, she had just slapped a new name on mine. Like putting a glitter sticker on a stolen car. I sent a letter through Alec to our longtime accountant, Angela Fields, someone Carla assumed would side with her. Angela took one look at the filings Carla submitted, and called me crying. "I didn't know, Michelle," she said. "She told me you wanted out. That you were too sick to handle it anymore. That this was your wish." I was too tired to be angry. I just said, "Angela, we're going to set the record straight. I just need one thing from you, don't tell her you spoke to me." Because now? I needed Carla to believe she'd won. While she made press appearances and signed mock partnerships, I met with the Hayeses again. This time, we did something permanent, we bought out her investors. Quietly. Legally. We offered them cash they couldn't refuse in exchange for their shares, and their silence. I rewrote the equity table, restructured the LLC into a new entity, and prepared a legal notice of transfer and termination. Every move I made? She never saw it coming. But the final piece? The most poetic part? I scheduled a private lunch with a few of our oldest, most loyal clients, the kind of people who built our brand alongside us. I showed them the timeline, the forgery, the lies. One of them, a luxury hotel group CEO, said, "She said you gave her your blessing. That you were done." I just looked him in the eye and said, "Do I look done?" They cancelled their upcoming campaign with Carla the next day. That's when I knew it was time. I told Alec, "Send the notice. Set the meeting." Because the next time I walked into our office, no, my office, it wouldn't be as a ghost. It would be as the woman she tried to erase. And trust me, I was going to haunt every inch of that space until justice echoed off the walls. It was a Friday. Bright. Pretentious. The kind of morning when people post fake success quotes with their overpriced lattes. Carla was hosting what she called a brand evolution celebration luncheon, complete with catered sushi, a hired photographer, and the nerve to invite my former clients to toast her vision. She didn't know those clients had already called me, furious, heartbroken, loyal. She didn't know they'd be sitting at her tables with secret looks on their faces, waiting. I didn't wear anything dramatic. Just a fitted blazer, dark jeans, and a silk scarf tied neatly over my regrown curls. My body still ached from radiation. But I didn't limp. I didn't flinch. I walked through the lobby of the very office building I had signed a lease for 5 years ago. The same building where she'd changed the signage to Whitaker & Company, in rose gold, no less. At reception, the intern blinked. Hi, are you?" I smiled. "I'm Michelle Danner. Founder. Tell Carla her surprise has arrived." The moment I stepped into the open-floor office, time slowed. Carla stood near the window, laughing too loud, waving a champagne flute like she was born with bubbles in her blood. She saw me, and froze. That glass didn't drop. She held it tight. But her face? It cracked, just a bit. like a vase about to split. Michelle, she said, teeth tight behind her smile. What are you doing here? I kept walking. Straight to the front. No rage. No drama. Just facts. I'm here to reclaim what you stole. Gasps. One from a junior client. One from the woman taking event photos. Alex stepped in beside me and handed her a thick envelope. Ms. Whitaker, this is a legal notice of equity transfer and immediate termination. Based on your misuse of funds, client deception, and breach of fiduciary duty, you are no longer affiliated with this company. Effective immediately. She laughed. Tried to. You can't just walk in here and, you're right, I said. I didn't just walk in. I walked in after I bought out every silent investor, reclaimed legal ownership, and rewrote the bylaws that you tried to delete. This entire party is being hosted in my building. Under my electricity. With clients I built. And from now on, under a name you no longer have the right to use. She turned red. Then pale. Then red again. This is insane. Is it? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Because the tax filings say otherwise. The contracts you forged say otherwise. And the camera over that desk? I pointed up. It's been recording since 9 a.m. Including the part where you bragged about cutting out the dead weight. You were talking about me, right? The silence in that room wasn't just awkward, it was judicial. People began stepping back. One of the clients stood up and said, I want to work with the woman who didn't lie to me. That's when Carla lost it. Screamed something about betrayal. That I was ungrateful. That I owed her for carrying the company while I was sick. I didn't respond. Alec did. He said, security has been notified. Please pack your personal items. And Ms. Whitaker? Your NDA begins now. 2 guards came in. She protested. Sobbed. But they didn't touch her, they just pointed. She had to walk through that room, past everyone she had manipulated, clutching her purse and half a platter of untouched sushi. I stood in the doorway as she passed. Her eyes met mine. She tried one last time. We were friends. No, I said. We were business partners. Until I became your opportunity. And just like that, she was gone. I stood in the center of the office, surrounded by silence, until someone clapped. Then another. And another. My old receptionist ran over and hugged me so tightly I thought I'd cry. But I didn't. Because this wasn't the end. This was the rebirth. It took exactly 3 days. 3 days from the moment Carla was escorted out in front of our clients for her to do what snakes always do when cornered, strike with venom and pray it hits. On the morning of the 3rd day, I woke up to a headline someone forwarded to me, cancer-stricken co-founder accused of sabotage by former partner, and the subtext? Even worse. It quoted sources close to Carla claiming I'd faked financial documents, manipulated investors while under medication, and used my illness as a sympathy tool to reclaim power. It was spin so twisted, it could have been written by a Hollywood villain. But I didn't panic. Because I knew she was going to do this. I even had a name for the folder I'd prepared weeks earlier on my desktop, Carla's Implosion. Inside were date-stamped files, client emails, backups of every financial trail, and 3 recorded investor calls where she admitted to making an executive decision during my absence. The jewel in the crown? A screen recording of her editing my name out of our website's source code, done from a company laptop with our IP address logged. But I didn't release any of it. Not yet. Instead, I called a woman named Renee Colton, a journalist I once did branding for, who now worked at a respected finance publication. I said, I have a story. But it's not about drama. It's about resilience. And about what happens when women betray each other for power. Renee met me in a quiet cafe 2 hours later. I slid the USB across the table and said, "When you're done reviewing this, I'll give you the exclusive." By sundown, I had a draft of her article in my inbox. She survived cancer and corporate theft. Now she's taking her company back with grace and receipts. We published it 2 days later. It spread like wildfire. Why? Because people wanted to believe in a comeback. They wanted to believe not every victim stays buried. The headline trended. My inbox flooded with client support, messages from other founders, and one email from an executive at a female entrepreneur conference asking me to speak about betrayal, branding, and backbone. Carla, meanwhile, doubled down. She went on a podcast and cried. Claimed she was being erased by a manipulative survivor narrative. Said I used cancer to make people feel sorry for me. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because the comments section turned on her with a speed she never saw coming. Former interns. Vendors. Even our old janitor who posted, "That woman once yelled at me for vacuuming too loud. Michelle used to bring me coffee." But the true poetic blow? Came a week later, when her personal assistant, who she'd underpaid and overworked for years, leaked screenshots of Carla's private messages. In one, she said, "Once Michelle dies or disappears, this whole brand will be mine." That was the final nail. The company she tried to start independently tanked in under a month. Her sponsors dropped her. Her apartment lease mysteriously ended. I heard she tried to pitch a new startup to an old investor of ours, and was met with a dry, "Is this before or after your next betrayal?" As for me, I rebranded the company. Not with glitter or rose gold, but with grit. Phoenix Studios became known not just for its design, but its story. Clients didn't just hire us for aesthetics. They hired us because we survived. Because we stood back up when everything, cancer, betrayal, ego, tried to erase us. And that, my friend, is how you handle someone who tries to steal your name while you're fighting for your life. You don't scream. You don't fight dirty. You just make sure when they bury you, you come back holding the deed to the grave. The venue smelled like polished wood and ambition. Velvet seats, stage lights warming the floor, and rows of eyes waiting to hear how I'd turned betrayal into a brand. I stood behind the curtain, fingers curled around a note card I didn't even need. Every word I was about to say? Burned into my bones. The moderator's voice echoed across the auditorium, and now, the woman who turned a comeback into a company, Michelle Danner. Applause rose. I walked out. But just before I stepped into the spotlight, a hand touched my arm. I turned and froze. Carla. Her hair wasn't curled. Her lips weren't glossed. She looked smaller. Older. Like she'd shrunk inside her own consequences. But her eyes? Still sharp. Still searching for an angle. "I just want 5 minutes," she whispered. "No," I said. "You don't even know what I was going to say." "Yes, I do." I looked her dead in the eyes. "You were going to apologize. Then justify. Then ask for something. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe a reference. Maybe just for me not to name you." Her mouth opened, but I didn't give her the chance. "You didn't just steal from me, Carla. You tried to rewrite my death before I was even gone." The silence between us was violent. But I didn't flinch. I stepped forward. And left her standing in the shadows where she belonged. The stage lights hit me full force. I blinked against their heat, then smiled at the sea of faces, strangers, supporters, survivors. "Hi. My name is Michelle Danner," I began. "And I was erased while fighting for my life. But I came back with a pen and rewrote every lie." Laughter. Nods. One woman in the front row wiped her cheek. "I co-founded a company with someone I trusted. When cancer returned, I handed her the passwords, the keys, the finances. She told me to focus on healing, while she quietly removed my name from everything. Website. Bank account. Clients. Logo. She even threw a party in my honor that I wasn't invited to. Soft gasps. A few tight-lipped headshakes. But here's what she didn't know. I kept the truth. Handwritten. Backed up. Dated. I bought out her investors. Claimed the company back. And walked in during her celebration, to fire her, in front of the very people she lied to. Applause rippled, hesitant at first. Then louder. I don't tell you this for revenge, I said. I tell you because every woman in this room has a Carla. A person who waited for you to fall so they could climb. And I want you to remember something, your silence is not a contract. Your pain is not permission. And your absence does not equal your end. Now the room was roaring. But through it, I spotted movement near the wings. Carla was leaving. Quietly. No final glance. No explosion. Just disappearing. It hit me in a strange way, not victory. Not pity. Just clarity. She wanted to be part of my ending. But I had already written it without her. After the event, people swarmed the stage. Entrepreneurs. Survivors. A teenage girl whose mother had just been diagnosed said, "You made me believe we can still be strong while everything hurts." I signed her notebook. I left with 2 new contracts. 3 podcast offers. And 1 handwritten letter slipped into my bag that night, and signed, but I knew it was from Carla. It read, "You were always the heart." I just wanted to be the voice. I didn't respond. Because sometimes the best revenge is being too busy thriving to even look back. 2 weeks after the conference, I got an email from the National Female Founders Council. Congratulations. You've been nominated for the Rising from Ashes Award, celebrating women who rebuilt after public betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile at first. I just stared at the screen, wondering if the universe had finally decided to reward not just survival, but resilience with receipts. But then came the twist. A second email. Shorter. Colder. Please note, another nominee in your category, Carla Whitaker, will also be in attendance. Let us know if this presents a conflict. I laughed. Out loud. Alone in my office. The kind of laugh that's not joy, it's disbelief dressed as irony. Conflict? Oh, honey. Carla was a conflict in heels. She was the war I didn't start but definitely finished. I wrote back, no conflict at all. I'll be there. What they didn't know, what Carla definitely didn't know, was that I'd already been contacted by the event organizers weeks earlier. They'd seen the viral article, the podcast interview, the resurfaced screenshots. They knew the real story. But for the sake of drama, of tension, of headlines, they let both names stay in the ring. It wasn't an award ceremony. It was a reckoning. The night arrived like a storm wearing sequins. Glittering gowns. Wine swirling in crystal glasses. PR reps clutching folders. I wore a navy suit. Sharp. Sleek. No apology in the silhouette. My hair was finally long enough to curl again. And I curled it for me. I saw her near the bar. Carla. Wearing red, of course. Her version of control. She looked good. Polished. Smiling too widely at sponsors who now saw through her. But when she spotted me, her posture faltered for a split second. Then she recovered, gave a shallow nod. I gave none back. During dinner, they seated us 6 chairs apart. Not close enough to spar. But close enough for the cameras to catch reactions. I didn't flinch once. When the MC took the stage and said, "This next award celebrates strength, survival, and the will to rise when everything burns around you," I knew it was time. She began listing accomplishments. She overcame cancer, rebuilt her brand from the ashes of betrayal. Carla sat up straighter, maybe thinking it could still be her. She turned pain into power, and silence into leadership. Please welcome Michelle Danner. The applause nearly drowned out the blood rushing in my ears. I walked to the stage, heels striking like punctuation marks, and took the glass award in my hands. Heavy. Real. I didn't prepare a speech. I didn't need one. I used to think betrayal was the worst thing that could happen to you, I began. But it's not. The worst thing is when you start to believe the people who betray you were right. That you really are replaceable. Forgotten. Weak. But here's the truth, I didn't just survive betrayal. I studied it. I built a blueprint from it. And I used it to create something stronger than before. A few heads turned toward Carla. Good. And to the women here who've been erased, by friends, by partners, by illness, by fear, I want to say this: you don't need revenge. You need clarity. You don't need to scream. You just need to stand tall enough that your presence makes them whisper. I held up the award. This isn't for the company I lost. It's for the company I reclaimed. When I stepped off stage, a dozen hands reached for mine. But one never did. Carla left early. No goodbye. No tantrum. Just a quiet exit out the side door, while I posed for photos, smiled into microphones, and watched her reflection disappear behind the hotel's glass walls. She tried to share my spotlight. But I was the spotlight. It was a rainy Tuesday. The kind of gray day where everything feels suspended, like even time is waiting for something to happen. I had just finished reviewing a rebrand proposal when I saw the subject line pop into my inbox: "You don't know me, but I used to work for her. And now she's coming after me." The email was from someone named Leah Foreman. Young. Early 30s. Former junior strategist under Carla, back when we were still a we. She'd always been quiet, but talented. One of the few team members who used to leave sticky notes on my monitor that read things like "Loved your edits," or "Hope your day feels strong." She vanished from the company when Carla took over. I assumed she found another job. I never expected her to re-enter my life like this. The email was long. Emotional. But the message was clear: Carla had found a new target. After our very public fallout and her loss of brand credibility, Carla had started a side consultancy, lean, low profile, desperate. Leah had been brought on as her digital strategist. Only a few weeks in, Leah realized Carla was reusing my old pitch decks, repackaging my client proposals word for word. When Leah questioned it, Carla gaslit her. Then fired her. Then slapped her with a defamation lawsuit for attempting to sabotage her professional image. Leah had no money for a lawyer. But she had evidence, screenshots, audio snippets, even old Slack messages showing Carla instructing her to plagiarize my work. I called her. "Hi," she said, her voice shaking. I didn't know who else to reach out to. "I know you owe me nothing." "You're wrong," I replied. "I owe every woman who's ever been burned by her the one thing I never got: protection." And just like that, Carla's web started unraveling again. I forwarded the materials to Alec, my lawyer. He reviewed everything, then smiled, actually smiled. "This is good," he said. "She's not just repeating old crimes. She's documenting them." We countered her lawsuit. Filed a claim for IP theft. Used Leah's evidence to expose how Carla had not only violated multiple contracts but also lied to potential clients about collaborating with me, using my name like a ghost she could puppeteer when convenient. But the final blow? It came from within Carla's new consultancy itself. Another ex-employee, fired just a month ago, caught wind of the case and reached out to me. She handed over an internal memo where Carla wrote, "Michelle may have survived cancer, but I'm the one who'll survive this industry." People forget scandals. They remember confidence. We made sure everyone remembered both. With Leah's permission, we released a joint statement. Not vengeful. Not angry. Just honest. About abuse of power. About stolen credit. About how young women in business are too often used as shields by women trying to claw back relevance. It trended. Carla tried to backpedal. Issued a performative apology. Blamed internal miscommunication. Claimed she was being misunderstood by former staff with personal agendas. No one bought it. Within 2 weeks, her consultancy's website was down. Her social profiles locked. Her name became digital poison. Companies pulled her speaking slots. Sponsors ghosted. Her name didn't spark curiosity anymore, only caution. As for Leah? She now works at Phoenix Studios. Her first project? A mentorship program for young female strategists who faced workplace exploitation. She named it the Lighthouse Project. Why the name? I asked her one afternoon. She smiled. Because when I emailed you, I felt like I was drowning. And you became the light. I won't pretend that didn't make me tear up. Carla tried to build her legacy by stepping on mine. But what she didn't understand was this: you can't build anything that lasts with bricks made of betrayal. The email came with glossy branding and more exclamation marks than necessary. We're thrilled to invite you to a televised panel, Powerhouse Women of Business, the comebacks, the empires, the fire. It was a primetime event. National broadcast. Big viewership. And the lineup? Impressive. CEOs, activists, artists. Women who'd turned ashes into empires. It felt like the right stage, until I saw the fine print, special surprise guest, anonymous until live reveal. I narrowed my eyes. That kind of ambiguity always comes with a hook. Or a trap. I forwarded it to Alec. Within the hour, I had my answer. The surprise guest was none other than Carla Whitaker. She'd signed a non-disclosure agreement with the producers, clearly hoping for one last gasp of relevance. Her angle? 2 former friends face each other for the first time since public scandal. It wasn't a panel. It was bait. And I took it. Not to fight. Not to scream. But to finish this in front of an audience who deserved to see what quiet power actually looked like. The studio was colder than expected, air conditioning cranked high, probably to keep nerves from sweating through silk blouses. I arrived early. Calm. Dressed in deep emerald, the color of survival and envy, 2 things Carla knew intimately. Backstage, the producer pulled me aside. We want real reactions. Feel free to speak from the heart. I smiled. I always do. The lights dimmed. Cameras rolled. The moderator did her part, charming, rehearsed. She introduced 3 of us, a tech founder, an activist, and me. We spoke about growth, grit, and grace. Then came the moment. And now, the moderator beamed, we have a surprise addition to the conversation. Another woman who's faced controversy and has her own story to share. Carla stepped out like a movie villain on a redemption tour. She wore soft tones, minimal makeup, and that carefully constructed look of remorse. The audience clapped, politely, confused. She walked slowly to the open seat beside me. "Hi, Michelle," she whispered. I didn't look at her. I looked into the camera. The moderator smiled awkwardly. "This is the first time you 2 have shared a space publicly since she tried to erase me while I was on a hospital bed," I said, still looking forward. "Yes." The audience gasped. Carla blinked. "Would you like to respond, Carla?" the host asked. She launched into a monologue. About stress. Miscommunication. The weight of expectations. About how women turning on each other is what the patriarchy wants. It was every recycled PR apology strung together by desperation. When she finished, the host turned to me. Michelle, your thoughts? I nodded. Here's the thing about betrayal, it's never an accident. It's a series of decisions made behind someone's back and in front of their open trust. Soft applause. I forgave her, I said. Carla turned sharply. You did? Yes. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means I no longer carry the weight of what she did. She does. Every day. The studio went still. And for anyone watching, I added, who's been betrayed while vulnerable, your story matters. Your silence doesn't protect the people who hurt you. It only chains you. I broke my silence not to destroy her, but to rebuild me. Carla stayed quiet after that. For the rest of the show, she barely spoke. When the cameras cut, she leaned over. Why didn't you humiliate me? I finally looked at her. Because you already did that yourself. I just held up the mirror. As I walked out of the studio, a young intern stopped me. Can I ask you something? Sure, I said. How do you stay so calm when someone who ruined so much is sitting right next to you? I smiled. Because I didn't walk into that room with wounds. I walked in with proof I healed. The letter was printed on thick ivory paper with embossed gold trim. It smelled like formality and desperation. I unfolded it slowly, expecting another generic invitation to speak about resilience or female leadership. But the second paragraph stopped me cold. In light of your groundbreaking work and public triumph over adversity, we'd be honored to invite you to be the keynote speaker at our upcoming Women in Leadership Gala. This event is hosted by our business department at Whitaker University. Yes. Whitaker University. Carla's alma mater. The place she never shut up about. The school that had once featured her on every brochure, every alumna newsletter, every panel about female entrepreneurship. The very same university that was now reaching out to me. The irony tasted expensive. I picked up the phone and called Alec. Guess who just invited me to keynote their gala? He barely paused. Please don't say the Devil's Prep School. Oh, it's worse. It's her temple. Are you going? I let the silence stretch. I think I have to. But I didn't say yes to gloat. I didn't need another headline. I wanted the students. The young women with notebooks in their bags and fear in their throats. The ones who looked up to people like Carla and didn't yet know the cost of trusting the wrong role model. The gala was held in a chandeliered ballroom with a rose gold stage that screamed legacy. Rows of alumni, professors, donors. But the students? They were the ones I looked for in the crowd, the ones with questions in their eyes and ambition in their hearts. Before I went on stage, I walked past a display table filled with framed photos of past speakers. Carla was there. Beaming. Hands clasped with a former dean. I didn't touch it. I just stared for a moment and whispered under my breath, "Watch closely." The event coordinator met me by the steps. We're honored you're here, Michelle. There's so much buzz about your story. Your name carries power now. I smiled. My story always had power. It's just louder now. As I took the stage, I felt no nerves. Only purpose. I opened with a truth I'd never spoken out loud before. When I was 41, I was diagnosed with cancer for the first time. When I was 52, it came back. And when I was at my weakest, a woman I trusted, who once called herself my sister, used my illness to erase me from the business we built together. Gasps. Shifts. Stillness. That woman graduated from this very university. More silence. But here's the thing. This story isn't about her. This is about what happens after you're erased. This is about how you pick up the scraps of your credibility, your dignity, your power, and build something even the thieves can't touch. I saw students lean forward, scribbling notes. I didn't come here tonight to tell you how to protect yourself from betrayal. Because sometimes you can't. People will smile at your wounds and steal while you sleep. But you can learn to rise faster than they expect. You can learn to make your name stronger than their lies. I paused. And when the very institutions that once celebrated your betrayer invite you to speak, you show up. Not to dance on ashes, but to plant new ground. The ovation wasn't loud. It was thunderous. After the event, a group of business majors gathered around me. One of them, no more than 20, asked if she had apologized sooner, would you have forgiven her? I looked her in the eye. I forgave her long ago. But forgiveness doesn't require reunion. Some people are meant to be the lesson, not the future. As I walked out of the ballroom, I passed that table again. Carla's photo was still there. But beside it, someone had placed a new one. Mine. It came in an envelope with no return address. No email. No logo. Just my name, handwritten in an uneven, almost trembling scrawl. At first, I thought it was fan mail, or worse, hate mail. That's the thing about surviving publicly. You become a symbol to some, a threat to others. I almost tossed it aside. Almost. But something made me sit down and open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Old-fashioned. The kind you'd find in a grandmother's drawer next to yellowing photographs and perfume-stained postcards. The handwriting was fragile, but legible. Dear Ms. Danner, you don't know me, but I know you. I've watched your story unfold with both horror and relief. Relief that someone finally saw through her. Someone who didn't fall for the smile she's used since she was 10. My name is Margaret Whitaker. I'm Carla's mother. And I'm writing to warn you, because the last time Carla's life collapsed, she didn't just fall, she dragged someone down with her. I froze. The letter continued, she's dangerous when cornered. Not because she's violent, but because she knows how to twist truth until it strangles. You think you've won. But Carla doesn't believe in losing. She believes in pause. And when she disappears, it's never retreat. It's a reload. Years ago, when she was in college, she sabotaged her roommate's scholarship after a petty argument. The girl ended up dropping out. Carla framed it as a misunderstanding. Just like she did with you. I've tried to reach her. To stop her. To fix what I never corrected when she was young. But she doesn't take calls from me anymore. So I'm doing the only thing I can. I'm telling the woman she hates most right now, the woman she couldn't destroy, please, be careful. If she tries to come back into your orbit, it won't be for closure. It will be for control. You're not just her rival, Michelle. You're her obsession. Sincerely, Margaret Whitaker. My hands were shaking. And not from fear, from understanding. Because suddenly, so many strange things made sense. The anonymous comment under one of my podcast videos that read, "You think she's the villain, but some stories are flipped." The PR manager who ghosted me last minute after confirming a deal, then mysteriously began working at a brand Carla had quietly consulted on. The tech glitch in our system that Alex said looked like an internal breach attempt, but was too clumsy to track. I had thought Carla was done. But Margaret was right. She wasn't gone. She was waiting. Watching. Rewriting her next attack. That night, I called Alec. I read him the letter word for word. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he sighed. Then it's time to stop assuming she's just a failed opportunist. She's a pattern. And patterns don't stop unless you break them. We started a deeper investigation. Background checks. Digital surveillance. A quiet audit of my systems, my contracts, even my inbox. And that's when we found it. A fake email address. Using my name. Emailing current clients subtle updates about my health complications. Suggesting I might be stepping down again. Slowly trying to seed doubt. She hadn't just been waiting. She'd already begun. And now? I wasn't going to play defense. I was going to end this, for good. There's a moment in every storm when the thunder quiets, just long enough to make you believe it's over. That was Carla's mistake. She thought the silence meant I was done watching. That my success meant I'd stopped noticing. But I'd learned, when someone like her disappears, she doesn't dissolve. She disguises. And I was done being polite about predators and pearls. Once Alec and I traced the fake email address, Michelle D. business@gmail.com, subtle, wasn't it? We dug deeper. Metadata. IP logs. Spoofed email headers. The account was sending messages to my clients, subtly discrediting me. Phrases like Michelle may not be taking on new projects due to her health, and will soon be making changes to leadership. It was social manipulation in digital form. Carla didn't need to steal a business this time. She just needed to corrode it, one seed of doubt at a time. So we planted a few seeds of our own. Alec helped me craft an internal memo. One that looked confidential. We used a fake client name. A fake merger deal. Even a fake temporary password. We sent it through our regular email systems, but intentionally leaked it through one vulnerable channel we knew Carla still monitored. Within 48 hours, that same fake client was contacted. Not by us. By an anonymous consultant offering a better rate, faster delivery, and inside knowledge of our overwhelmed leadership team. The client, who happened to be an old friend of mine, played along. He responded. He asked for a Zoom meeting. Carla showed up in a wig and dark glasses. Seriously. A wig. Like she was auditioning for a community theater production of Revenge 101. The Zoom call was recorded. So was the moment she said, Michelle doesn't even know I'm helping some of her biggest clients now. She's spread too thin. You'll be better off with someone who's been on the inside. That was all we needed. We brought the footage to a judge. And this time, we didn't just file a civil cease and desist. We filed criminal charges for impersonation, fraud, and breach of digital privacy. And we didn't do it quietly. A week later, we held a press conference. Just like she would have. But mine wasn't bitter. It was clean. Direct. Professional. We outlined the situation. Presented the evidence. Warned others about email impersonation scams, especially women entrepreneurs being targeted by former colleagues or ex-partners. Carla's name wasn't the headline. Her arrest was. Former CEO impersonates cancer survivor in elaborate sabotage scheme. She was taken in without cuffs. But the photos were still humiliating. Makeup uneven. Hair flat. Eyes wide with disbelief. This time, there was no podcast spin. No PR strategy. No panel to crash. Just silence. But not for me. Within 72 hours, I received over 300 messages, founders, creators, artists thanking me for speaking up. Telling me how their Carla had gotten away with it. How they'd been too afraid to go public. I created a public archive called the Quiet Cuts Project. A database where women could document professional betrayals, silent sabotage, and learn legal options. It exploded. And suddenly, the name Michelle Danner wasn't just associated with a comeback. It became a movement. Carla tried to burn down my name in secret. But I set fire to her whole strategy, in public. The request came through Alec, sealed in sterile legal formality. Carla Whitaker, defendant, requests a private, off-record meeting with Michelle Danner prior to the hearing. At first, I laughed. Out loud. I was in my office reviewing our next launch campaign for the Quiet Cuts project when Alec read it to me. My first instinct was a hard no. But then, something strange twisted in my gut. Not fear. Not dread. Curiosity. Why now? Why not through lawyers, spin, or shadow games like she always played? Alec warned me. It's a trap, Michelle. She wants sympathy. Or to provoke you into saying something she can use in court. But I wasn't afraid of Carla's games anymore. Because I had something she'd never understand. Control. So I said yes. But under one condition, the meeting would be held in a neutral location, with cameras rolling, time-stamped. No hidden agendas. No side doors. Just her, me, and the truth. We met in a private room at the mediation office. Beige walls. 2 chairs. 1 glass table. No coffee. No distractions. Just the air between us, dense and unfinished. She walked in wearing gray slacks and a blazer like armor. But her eyes were tired. Her skin blotchy beneath makeup. She was unraveling, but still pretending to be stitched together. Michelle, she said softly. Carla. She sat. I didn't offer a smile. I didn't offer anything. She looked at the camera in the corner. So this is how it's going to be? You requested the meeting. I made it safe. She folded her hands. I just wanted to explain. The emails. The consulting. It wasn't what you think, it was exactly what I think, I said calmly. And now it's what the court thinks. She flinched. Just slightly. Then came the act. The one I'd seen her pull with investors, clients, donors. The tilted head. The voice trembling just enough to sound human. You have to understand. I was losing everything. You had the spotlight. The brand. The sympathy. I didn't have anything left. I stared at her. You had choices. You could have apologized. Stepped away. Rebuilt with humility. I was humiliated, she snapped, mask slipping. You made me look like a monster. I didn't make you do anything, Carla. I just documented it. Her eyes burned. So this is who you are now? The Queen of Revenge? No, I said. I'm the woman who learned not to hand the keys to someone who breaks into the house while pretending to water the plants. Silence. She inhaled like she was about to launch a new monologue, but I cut in. Carla, this isn't a confession booth. You're not looking for forgiveness. You're looking for a reset. One where I walk away and you pretend it never happened. She looked at me, desperate now. Please. I can't go to jail. I can't see that, I said, standing, is no longer my concern. You stole from me, lied about me, used my illness against me, and impersonated me while smiling for cameras. Now you get to face the audience without a mask. I turned to leave. But before I reached the door, she whispered, "You're not better than me." I stopped. Looked over my shoulder. I don't need to be, I said. I just needed to stop being like you. And with that, I walked out. No tears. No rage. Just the echo of her silence, and the camera still rolling. The courtroom smelled like nerves. Paper. Polished shoes. The kind of place where truth waits its turn while everyone pretends to be calm. I sat in the front row, Alec beside me, both of us silent as the proceedings began. The judge was precise. No small talk. No leniency. Case number 7342B, State of California vs. Carla Whitaker. Charges include online impersonation, wire fraud, digital harassment, and corporate sabotage. Carla walked in flanked by her legal team, dressed in charcoal gray, a shade that wanted to look like dignity but reeked of desperation. She didn't glance at me. Not once. She didn't need to. Because she knew the show was over. And yet, she still had one card left. Or so she thought. Her lawyer stood up and said, "We'd like to submit new character evidence, testimony from a longtime associate who will testify to Ms. Whitaker's intentions and state of mind." I braced myself. And then, she walked in. Julia Knox. Carla's old communications director. The woman who used to trail behind her at every event, who once called her the most brilliant woman I've ever worked for. I nearly laughed. Until I saw Julia's face. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't here to defend. She was here to reveal. Under oath, Julia sat straight and spoke with terrifying calm. "I worked for Carla Whitaker for 5 years. I left the firm after she instructed me to delete Michelle Danner's name from all marketing material, while Michelle was hospitalized." Carla's jaw visibly tensed. The judge raised an eyebrow. Did she explain why? She said, and I quote, "Michelle's already halfway out the door. Let's make it official." The courtroom stirred. Julia continued. "I didn't speak out then. I was afraid. But after what Carla did with the fake emails and the impersonation, I realized silence makes me complicit. I also have printed copies of internal chats, voice memos, and task lists where Carla instructed staff to mimic Michelle's writing style and send emails to clients pretending to be her." She handed them over. Neatly. Efficiently. Carla's lawyer tried to object, something about relevance and character defamation, but the judge waved it off. "This is direct evidence," she said. "Admissible and damning." Julia's final line was soft, but it cracked through the room like lightning. She didn't just try to replace Michelle. She tried to be Michelle. And when she couldn't, she decided to ruin her. I exhaled so slowly I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath. It wasn't triumph. It was truth, and it had finally been spoken, not by me, not by Alec, not even by a journalist, but by someone who once believed in Carla and had chosen truth over loyalty. When the court recessed for lunch, Carla finally looked at me. Her face was unreadable. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a glare. Or a smirk. I just stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked past her, without a word. Because here's the thing about betrayal: when your house burns down, you can either scream at the ashes, or rebuild somewhere brighter, sturdier, without termites in the walls. And right now? Carla was crumbling. And I wasn't lifting a single finger to stop it. It was supposed to be a quiet exit. Just a breath of air after 3 hours of courtroom tension, scrolling headlines, and Julia Knox's testimony still ringing in everyone's ears. Alec stayed behind to finalize paperwork with the clerk. I told him I'd be right outside, just around the corner from the courthouse, where the press hadn't quite flooded yet. I needed a minute to breathe. But instead, I got Carla. She was waiting near the alley where the courthouse parking lot met the side gate. No cameras. No press. Just 2 women and 20 years of unfinished venom. "Michelle," she said, stepping out from behind a pillar. "Please. I held up my hand. "This isn't a conversation." "Yes, it is." Her voice cracked. "It has to be. You don't understand what they're going to do to me." My face didn't move. "They're going to hold you accountable. Something I should have done 10 years ago." She shook her head, trembling now, not from cold, but from unraveling. "You think this is justice? You think making me rot in front of the media makes you safe?" "No," I said. "Being rid of you makes me safe." She stepped closer. "You turned everyone against me. You rewrote the story." "No," I corrected. "I told the story. The truth. You're just angry no one wants to read your version anymore." And then she did something I didn't expect. She collapsed. Not to the ground, but into herself. Her voice softened, hands shaking. She whispered, "I wasn't always like this. I used to be good. You know I did." I stared at her. And for a brief, flickering second, I saw the girl I once co-founded a company with. The one who brought donuts to late-night strategy sessions. The one who held my hand the first time I went into surgery. The one who smiled beside me when we signed our first client. But that girl? She was long dead. And this woman? Was trying to wear her ghost-like perfume. "I believe you were good once," I said quietly. "But somewhere along the way, success stopped being enough for you. You didn't want to build anymore. You wanted to own. Even if you had to steal it from the sick. From the scared. From me." Her eyes welled, mascara pooling beneath. And then, footsteps. Journalists rounded the corner. Too late. They already saw her crying, already saw me standing still, composed, shoulders back. One snapped a photo. Another started filming. Carla turned toward me and whispered through gritted teeth, "Don't you dare use this moment against me." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I don't need to use anything against you. You've done all the work yourself." I turned to the cameras. "If anyone needs a statement," I said clearly, "just quote this: accountability is not cruelty. It's closure." And some people mistake the two because they've never experienced either. I walked away. This time, not just from the courthouse, but from her. For the last time. Because in that alley, in front of those lenses, Carla Whitaker finally gave me the one thing she'd never meant to, proof that her breakdown wasn't a story twist. It was the ending. The courtroom felt colder that day. Like the air knew what was coming. The whispers from the press section were quieter, the tapping of lawyers' keyboards slower. Even Carla's legal team, once puffed up with the hope of settlement deals and plea bargains, now sat hunched and stiff, like men already digging trenches. Alec leaned toward me. "Whatever happens, remember, it's not just about the sentence. It's about the message." I nodded, eyes fixed on the double doors where the judge would soon enter. Carla walked in 2 minutes later. She didn't look at me. She looked straight ahead, jaw clenched, wearing a muted gray dress and hair pulled back tight enough to make her forehead shine. Gone was the woman who used to sweep into offices with red lipstick and louder ambition. She looked smaller now. Not weak. Just stripped. The judge entered. The bailiff called order. And then, it began. "Ms. Whitaker," the judge began, voice calm but cutting, "you stand before this court after months of investigations, digital forensic analysis, and eyewitness testimony. The evidence submitted confirms that you engaged in repeated acts of digital impersonation, wire fraud, breach of contract, and intentional sabotage of a former business partner during and after her medical leave." You could hear her swallow. Even that sounded guilty. Furthermore, the judge continued, "Your actions demonstrate not just malice, but calculation. You used your knowledge of Ms. Danner's business and her personal vulnerabilities to orchestrate a campaign of deception, both internal and public-facing." He paused. Then came the verdict. "This court finds you guilty on all counts." No reaction from Carla. Just the tight twitch of her lower lip. Her hands clasped so tight they trembled. A moment passed. Then the judge looked directly at her. "As for sentencing, this court believes in consequences that serve the community and the message. Therefore, you are sentenced to 16 months of supervised custody at a white-collar detention center, followed by 3 years of probation and a permanent injunction barring you from holding any executive, advisory, or digital marketing position without public disclosure of this case." Gasps. Whispers. Reporters scribbling furiously. But then, the judge delivered the final blow. "You are also ordered to complete 400 hours of mandatory business ethics education and restorative service, to be performed under the administration of an organization selected by this court. He glanced at the papers. That organization, he added, is Phoenix Studios. Founded by Ms. Danner, the very woman you tried to erase. Carla blinked. She looked toward her lawyer. Then at me. For the first time since this began, she looked lost. Not angry. Not defiant. Just hollow. She wasn't going to prison in chains. She wasn't being paraded through headlines in an orange jumpsuit. She was being handed something far worse: silence. Obedience. Humility. The courtroom emptied slowly. Carla was escorted out quietly, flanked by marshals. No cuffs. Just shame. Alec leaned over and whispered, "You sure you're okay hosting her for those hours?" I nodded. "I won't be hosting her." He raised an eyebrow. "She'll report to the program director. She'll never set foot in my wing, never look at my face. But every time she files a report, sends an update, teaches a class on rebuilding after betrayal, she'll know exactly whose building she's standing in." Later that week, I walked past the new signage outside our community education office. The Phoenix Ethics Initiative. I smiled. Because justice didn't always wear handcuffs. Sometimes, it sat in a borrowed office chair, filling out a timesheet in the name of the woman it tried to destroy. It arrived in a pink envelope. Handwritten. No return address again, but this time, I didn't feel dread. I felt curiosity. It had been 2 weeks since the verdict. Carla had begun her court-ordered hours at Phoenix Studios, tucked away in the Ethics Initiative wing, where she filed lesson plans like a ghost haunting her own story. I never saw her. Never heard her voice. And yet, her shadow lingered, until this letter arrived and turned her story into something bigger. I opened it carefully. Inside, folded with a single piece of twine, was a short note. Simple. But it hit like a freight train. "Dear Michelle, you don't know me, but I knew her. I was a marketing student at Whitaker University. Carla came to speak at one of our Women in Business events 2 years ago. She was radiant, sharp, confident, everything I wanted to be. I even lined up for a photo with her. I saved it as my phone wallpaper. I told people she was my role model. I interned under her for a few months after graduation. And I saw things. The manipulation. The shifting blame. The obsession with optics over ethics. I remember she once said, "Winning matters more than truth. If you want to survive, pick one and let go of the other." It confused me. It scared me. But I still wanted to be like her. Until you. When your story came out, when you didn't just survive her but exposed her with grace, I felt my world shift. You showed me that strength doesn't come from silencing others. It comes from holding steady, even while people try to twist your silence into guilt. I turned down a job offer recently from a company that reminded me too much of Carla's tactics. I chose something smaller. Slower. Honest. Because of you. Thank you for teaching me that ambition without ethics is just another name for destruction. You saved me from becoming her. Sincerely, a girl who once thought power meant never apologizing. I sat back, the paper trembling in my hand. For the first time in months, I cried. Not because I was hurt. Not because I was angry. Because I knew. This was the moment it all shifted. Carla had built her brand on being admired. On drawing women in, only to use their loyalty as currency. But now? The women who once looked up to her were turning away. Choosing integrity over image. Choosing their future over her legacy. And I didn't need to destroy her reputation for that to happen. She did. I kept the letter. Framed it. Placed it in my office just below a photo of our very first Phoenix Studios team, the one Carla never touched. The one built by survivors, not strategists. Later that day, I launched a new mentorship initiative called The Second Draft. Its mission? Helping young professionals rewrite their paths before someone like Carla picks up the pen. We had 147 signups in the first 48 hours. As I closed my laptop that night, I whispered to myself, I didn't just survive her. I outlived her story. The email from the court system appeared in my inbox with a subject line that made my stomach clench: Request for early sentence review, Carla Whitaker. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because I did. Carla had submitted a formal request to have her sentence, specifically her required hours at the Phoenix Ethics Initiative, reduced by half based on good behavior, cooperation, and personal transformation. Attached was a letter from her assigned supervisor. It was polite. Neutral. Said Carla had shown up on time. Completed her modules. Participated in discussions with minimal resistance. She hadn't broken any rules. She hadn't caused any chaos. But she also hadn't changed. Not really. The words used were clinical. Compliant. Quiet. Productive. Nowhere did the letter say remorseful. Nowhere did it say engaged. It was the equivalent of doing the bare minimum and asking for a standing ovation. The final line read, due to her efforts and lack of infractions, we are asking the founder, Ms. Michelle Danner, to review and sign off on early release. Please advise. I closed my eyes. Because this was the moment I never imagined I'd face. It wasn't about legal revenge anymore. It wasn't about the audience, the narrative, or even the truth. It was about me, deciding whether I wanted her to finish what the court assigned, or walk away early while I held the key. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked into the Ethics Initiative's back wing, where the interns worked late, the coffee machine hissed non-stop, and the walls were covered in posters about accountability, equity, and ethical leadership. I stood there, reading one quote on the wall: You are not responsible for someone else's redemption. But you are responsible for the example you set. I breathed in. Then I returned to my office. I opened the email. And I replied, to whom it may concern, after reviewing Ms. Whitaker's progress, I respectfully decline her request for early release. Transformation is not proven by silence or compliance. It is proven by humility, repair, and the willingness to see one's own damage, not just serve time for it. Let her finish what she began. Let her sit with the discomfort she created. Let her learn the patience she never granted others. Sincerely, Michelle Danner. I hit send. And for the first time in this entire journey, I didn't feel adrenaline. Or triumph. Or dread. I felt free. Not because I denied her mercy. But because I gave her exactly what she never gave me, a full experience of consequences. That night, Alec texted me just 3 words, you did right. I turned off my phone. Opened my journal. And wrote a single sentence, this is not revenge. This is repair. It felt surreal. Like watching a play based on a nightmare I used to have, only now I was the one in control of the script. An invitation arrived in a crisp white envelope with the Phoenix Studios seal at the top, end-of-term speaker series, closing reflections on ethics, accountability, and growth. Guest speaker, Carla Whitaker. Yes. Carla. Her final obligation under court order. One last task before the system released her into a world that no longer feared her, but no longer admired her either. She was required to deliver a 15-minute public talk on what she had learned. Not about the company. Not about me. Just about the meaning of accountability. I was given the choice, attend or not. No pressure. Alec left it up to me. Go if you want, he said. But don't expect anything real. Expect a performance. And that's exactly why I did go. Not for her. For everyone watching. The room was small, intimate. 30 chairs, a single mic stand, and no press. Just interns, ethics students, and staff from the Quiet Cuts project. They filled the rows with notebooks on their laps and questions in their eyes. I slipped into the front row, second seat from the center. Not to intimidate, just to witness. Carla walked in wearing a black blouse and slacks. No makeup. No heels. No jewelry. Her hair was pulled back. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded her note cards at the podium. When she began to speak, her voice was calm. Steady. A little too practiced. I used to think accountability was a sentence, she said. A punishment. A consequence for getting caught. But now I see it's a mirror. She paused. It reflects not just what you've done, but who you allowed yourself to become while you did it. I didn't blink. She continued, I hurt someone who trusted me. I told myself it was about survival. Competition. Industry pressure. But the truth is, I just wanted to win. And I thought if no one saw me cheating, it didn't count as a foul. A few students scribbled notes. I know that apology isn't redemption, she said. And that being sorry doesn't make anything undone. But I also know that silence isn't strength. And denial isn't leadership. And sometimes, the only way to prove you've changed is to stop asking for forgiveness and start doing the work. That was the most honest thing she'd ever said. She didn't look at me once. When she finished, she didn't wait for applause. She simply stepped down, returned to her seat, and stared straight ahead. There was a pause. Then someone in the back asked, Do you think she forgives you? And Carla, for the first time, turned toward me. Our eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't plead. She just said, I think that's her story. Not mine. I nodded. That was the closest thing to peace we would ever have. And it was enough. After the event, I slipped out quietly. But one of the interns followed me out. A bright-eyed girl named Harper, maybe 23, hugged her notebook to her chest and asked, Do you think people like her actually change? I smiled. I think some do. And I think some just stop lying out loud. She nodded slowly. And you? What did you learn from all this? I looked up at the sky, already dusk-colored and wide. That I can survive being erased, I said. As long as I remember who I am before anyone else tells my story for me. Before we begin, if you've followed this journey, thank you. If you've ever been betrayed, gaslit, erased, or replaced in the moment you needed help the most, this story was for you. Please like, share, and subscribe if it moved you. And tell me in the comments, where are you from, and what betrayal did you survive that made you stronger? Now, let me tell you how it ended. The invitation came in the form of an embossed letter and a follow-up email marked urgent. The Global Ethics Summit, an annual gathering of CEOs, whistleblowers, and reformers, was holding its next event in Geneva. They wanted me to close the final day. The title of the closing keynote? Reclaiming Identity, When Ethics Become Personal. I stared at the words for a long time. Not because I doubted myself, but because I never imagined that surviving betrayal would one day be called leadership. The stage was massive. The audience, worldwide. Executives. Founders. Students. Journalists. Politicians. Women who had built kingdoms and had them stolen in the dark. And there I was. No cards. No slides. Just a microphone. And the memory of everything I'd been through. I opened with one line, I was never supposed to be here. Because someone who claimed to love me wanted to make sure I wasn't. You could hear the silence tighten. I let it. Then I began. I co-founded a business with someone I trusted more than family. When cancer returned, I handed her the keys, bank accounts, passwords, client lists, because I believed she'd protect the dream we built. I paused. She didn't. And then I told the rest. The fake emails. The impersonation. The stolen name. The rebrand without my permission. I told them about the court case, the verdict, the mandatory ethics program she completed under my company's roof. I told them I didn't ask for revenge. I just asked for record keeping. And the world handled the rest. I was betrayed while recovering from surgery. But the worst scar wasn't physical, it was how fast the people I hired believed I was gone. Heads nodded. But here's what I know now. Betrayal doesn't define you. It just shows you the floorboards of your life, what's strong, what's rotted, what needs to be rebuilt. I closed with this: if someone steals your name, your clients, your voice, it doesn't mean they won. It just means your voice was powerful enough to imitate. And then, I looked right into the camera. To anyone watching who's still recovering from a betrayal, stop waiting for an apology. You don't need it. You don't need permission to start again. You don't need revenge to be whole. All you need is your truth. Spoken clearly. Even if your voice shakes. The applause was endless. But the part that hit me hardest? Backstage. A woman in her 60s approached me, crying. My own sister tried to bankrupt me while I was in the hospital, she said. Everyone believed her. But after hearing you, I finally feel seen. Thank you. And that's when I realized, Carla was never the ending. She was just the middle. The real story was this. Not the betrayal. Not the lawsuit. But the moment the woman who was erased stood on the world stage. And rewrote the story in her own voice. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you've ever had someone try to erase you when you were vulnerable. You are not alone. And your comeback might just inspire the world.